Hi everyone, here just to briefly discuss paper number 2 and what is expected of you. So paper number 2 is due July 29th at 5 p.m. So you have a little bit more than 10 days, which I think is totally manageable, especially considering while week 7 has a decent amount of work, week 8 has considerably less. Week 7 is kind of the high point of the course, and then we ramp down in the last week, and I give you a bunch of time to work on your papers that are due at the end of that week. So I'm going to make this section live in just a little bit, this module on paper number 2, but let's take a quick look. You can click here for the instructions, and it'll download this PDF for you. So our assignment title is called Take Up the White Man's Burden, Arguments for and Against Colonialism. And per usual, I give you a bit of kind of background, perhaps extra information, but I like to give you a setup to where this question is coming from. And just to summarize, it's your job to read my kind of background that I've drawn up. But just to summarize, one of the major points of the second part of this class. So in our first part of our class, we talked a lot about the early stages of colonization, right? We talked about what happened after Columbus's voyage. We talked a lot about the transatlantic slave trade. And ultimately, your first paper asks you to talk a decent amount about abolition, which of course was directly related to the creation of the transatlantic slave trade and the first wave of colonialism. Therefore, keeping with a connected theme, the second paper asks you to talk a little bit about the second wave of colonialism. This is a global history course. So colonialism is one of the areas where we can talk a bit about the world as a whole. European colonialism, first in the Americas and then second in Africa and Southeast Asia, helped shape the modern world as we know it. We still witness the long-term ramifications of colonialism. People can say, sure, the slave trade was ended in the early 19th century, but the ramifications of slavery and the subjugation, not just in people's minds, but also in law, codified laws, reached long into the 20th and 21st centuries. And the same is true about colonization of other parts of the world. The colonization of Africa, the colonization of India, the colonization of Southeast Asia, the Philippines, of the Dutch Spice Islands, colonization of China. All of these moments are really important to understanding where the modern world is today. We still see the outcomes of colonization. And so this paper asks you to talk a bit about the justifications and arguments against the second wave of colonization that comes during the late 19th century and early 20th century. So I'm going to skip ahead to the prompt and then explain to you a little bit about what I'm expecting. So, and I'll talk a little about the sources you're going to use, because again, part of this class is teaching you how to think like a historian, right? And I've said it again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Historians don't just memorize names and dates. What we're really interested in is analyzing primary sources and developing debates. And so your primary source paper asks you to debate, not to memorize or regurgitate dates or anything like that. That's why I like papers better than exams too. I think papers make way more sense because they ask you to analyze and debate. Your prompt is this: after reading both the anti and pro-imperialist arguments that is, for colonization, which side do you believe made a stronger case, and why do you find this side's arguments stronger? So let me explain to you a little bit about what you're going to do. Here on Canvas, you'll notice I have linked to 7 external sites. One from Albert Beveridge. These are primary sources. So there's Albert Beveridge here. There's Kaiser Wilhelm II. We have a man in India who's going to be giving an argument for the benefits of British rule in India, but I'll explain to you a little bit about that. Kipling's The White Man's Burden. We have a French general from the Arabian Peninsula who's going to argue about imperialism in the Middle East. We've got a Chinese ambassador, his letter to Queen Victoria. And we also have the Anti-Imperialist League, a statement from Americans against imperialism. So what do these all mean, Professor O'Brien? I hear you saying. Well, what I've done is I've broken them down. 4 pro-imperialist arguments, 3 anti-imperialist arguments. Although it should be noted that 2 of these, this one here, as well as Lieutenant Colonel Carrant's message here, could be read either way. So it's fair to interpret those as either pro or anti. I tend to interpret them in the side that I've got them in, so pro or anti-imperialist. You're going to read these sources. You're going to read real people's either arguments for or arguments against imperialism. And they come in all sorts of different formats. For example, Albert Beveridge, this is a senator from the United States, he's giving a speech about the March of the Flag. So this is a speech that's made to American politicians, but also broadcast to the American people. Rudyard Kipling, of course, is writing a poem, The White Man's Burden. So they're very different types of sources, but ultimately at their core, they're doing the same thing. They are pro-imperialist. They are for and they back colonization. In contrast, our sources in the anti-imperial category are arguments against imperialization, about why imperialization is negative. What this prompt challenges you to do is you have to read all of these. I really challenge you, and it's in my piece of advice that I'll get to in a moment. Clear your mind. You might say, listen, I'm agreeing with the anti-imperialists because, fundamentally I know imperialism is wrong. Or you might be saying, I'm pro-imperialism. I'm going to agree with the imperialists. Clear your mind. Go into these sources without bias and read them and see which side you tend to agree with more and why, right? That is ultimately what the paper is doing. So as I note again in my suggestions, I'm asking for your opinion here. Which of these primary sources do you find most compelling and why? But even though you're using an opinion, you're stating an opinion, you need to use the sources to really build that opinion. So I've got some suggestions. You need to read all of these primary sources. If you say, hey, I'm anti-imperialism, I'm only reading the anti-imperialism sources, you're going to miss a key component of this paper, right? Some of these anti-imperialists might be writing directly towards the pro-imperialists. And it's really good if you can demonstrate how your side is better than the other side by using the other side's own words against them. So you really need to read all of the sources. And only once you've read and made notes on all of these sources can you actually answer the prompt. Number two, I want you to really think about outlining your papers. I think a lot of you did not outline for paper number one, and I'm going to show you a resource you can use to outline. Paper explanation video, you're watching it right now. Good work. Something you need to do. Remember, this isn't a creative writing exercise. I'm asking for your opinion, but you need to back it up with fact. Analyze primary sources. Use those primary sources to build an argument. Don't use conjunctions, right? Don't use conjunctions. Do not use conjunctions in your writing. Keep your sentences simple. Some of you like these huge run-on sentences where you don't have periods, you just put commas in there. Don't do that, right? Keep your sentences simple. Simple sentences can make strong points. Proofread. I can't emphasize that enough. I read too many papers that aren't proofread. It tells me two things. Either one, you didn't care about the assignment, and therefore didn't put in a lot of time, or you rushed it. Or two, your writing still needs a lot of work, and I can't give an A paper to one that's rushed or one that needs a lot of work. Email me if you are having trouble. That is also very important. Remember to email me. So be sure to read my introduction. Be sure to read the prompt again. Make sure to read all of the sources. Check out my piece of advice. Also, just want to throw a note out there. I know at least one of you is a graduating senior. Congratulations, you did it. This means that you need your papers entered by July 29th, your grades. I can do that. I've set aside July 29th to grade papers. My key advice to you would be to get it done before July 29th. That just helps you, even if it's a day, you can ensure that I've got your grade in on time. If you push past 5, maybe I was planning on reading it at 5:30 and submitting your grade at 6. You need to be in on time. Just get it in early. But also do me a favor. If you're a graduating senior whose grades are due by July 29th, you know who you are. You're planning on graduating at the end of this semester. Send me an email. It's how I can double check and make sure I've got all the graduating seniors done by July 29th. I'll get everyone else done either the next day or the day following to have your grades in on time. So you've got to make sure that you get me this essay in on time. Questions about it, email me. Another thing you'll notice is that there is a link on the Canvas to this outline guide / template. Some of you, I think, just start writing, and I think that's a huge mistake. You really need to outline what it is you're going to say. You'll notice in my instructions, I have advice for structure. You need an introduction, you need 3 supporting paragraphs, and you need a conclusion. Simple 5-paragraph essay that easily is 3 to 5 pages, so you're more than fine there. But you need to outline it first. So I've got here an outlining template. So you can actually use this template right here, print it out or fill it in online to type in your thesis statement. So many of you have your first papers. I'm going to look at your first papers before I grade your second. Almost all of you didn't create full thesis statements. A lot of you just reiterated the question. You need to come up with a thesis statement. A thesis statement in this paper is the side you agree with and why you agree with them, right? Hopefully with some reference to the primary sources, which sources you're going to use to build your argument. That's your thesis statement. Write your thesis statement first. Put it in this thesis statement section, and then you can build your point and topic sentences for your 3 supporting paragraphs right below it. You print this out, like I said, fill it in, and you can often reference back to it as you're writing. You might be saying, well, how exactly does this work? I've got some examples here for you to look at of me filling in fictional essay questions with fictional thesis statements and points. Let's look at outline number 2. This is kind of just a really broad but a fun one. Imagine an essay question that said, should college students be required to write essays? Ironic, should college students be required to write essays? An essay question about that. I've plugged in here a thesis statement that I would make to answer this essay. I believe that college students should be required to write essays because, regardless of the jobs they wish to take after graduation, all employers are looking for students who can organize their ideas, convey their thoughts in writing, and use proper grammatical skills. Notice I have the answer, I have the because, and I also have an outline. Then take a look. My points. Essays require organization. Essays require language skills. In addition to language skills, writing essays requires knowledge of grammar rules. And then look, I've got topic sentences that would start all of those paragraphs. That's the bones. If any of you watch those great television shows on Home and Garden Network about renovating homes, you know, a home needs good bones to build around. An essay needs good bones to build around. You need a strong thesis statement, you need strong points, and you need strong topic statements. If you outline like this first, the answer to your question about pro or anti-imperialism, I guarantee you'll be on stronger footing than if you just start writing. So just to summarize again, right here in the paper 2 number module, you have the instructions, you have that outline guide and template, and you have links to all of the sources that you'll need to look at. A lot of them are through Fordham.edu. They have really good primary sources. Fordham, the Jesuit University of New York. I've got a lot of links to their sources. So you'll notice the March of the Flag is quite long, and you might be like, Professor, what are you doing to me? I don't have time to read all that. Don't worry, I offset it. If we look at Kaiser Wilhelm II, here you go, a short little speech that he gives here. They're often accompanied by these little short introductions as to who the people are. This one actually doesn't have one, so you might want to look up this. A Google search will do a good job. I also provide to you a brief background when I've got the source listed on the instructions. So you want to read through these sources, these 7 sources here, and the entire time that you're reading through it, you want to be thinking about which argument is made better, the pro or the anti-imperialist argument, and why do you find yourself gravitating towards that side. I wish you a lot of luck in writing this paper. Like I said, if you have any questions, be sure to email me. If you want help with the paper, the first thing I'm going to ask is for you to send me your outline. So if you haven't done that, make sure you do it. I appreciate it. I look forward to reading these as well, and I wish you the best of luck. See you soon.